So, one day, I was on my computer and thought, you know what would be time well spent? Reading the Bible. And so that's what I did. Disclaimer. I'm not religious. Please don't debate which religion is better in the comments, and don't try to convert people down there either. I will not be judging the Bible on its religious text qualities, but instead I'll be judging it on its story qualities. Which is why I'm reading the ecumenical version. It's in 3 parts, so there will be 3 videos. The people of God are called the Hebrews, before finding the promised land, and the Israelis, after finding the promised land. To avoid confusion with modern Israel, I will be calling them Hebrews. I'm reading it in French, so any translation will be made by me. Also, I'm a ginger, and thus sold my soul to Satan. Let's get into it. I want to highlight how much I struggled making this review. If I wanted to go point by point, I would have to explain every story in detail, and that would take too long and be boring. But if I wanted to go aspect by aspect, I would have had to leave out a lot of things I wanted to say. So I ended up doing a bit of both. Let's start with
the story. The Bible. The Bible. Now I thought the Bible was just gonna be a bunch of stories about God, rules, lessons, stories on how the Hebrews are better than everybody else because they believe in God. And the first 5 books, which is basically the Torah, are about that, but the rest of the first third is just the same story over and over again, just formatted differently. The Hebrews don't believe in God, something bad happens, God helps them, they thank God, and then they go and worship Baal or whoever. After a while, you start wondering why God made the Hebrews his people. The Bible starts with Genesis, which is about the creation of the world, and the Hebrews' first 4 ancestors: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. First we have the story of Cain and Abel. You probably know this one, but what you didn't know is that there is absolutely no build-up to Abel's death. A lot of characters live for like 900 years. It's kind of strange that the authors thought this was possible, since people back in their time would have lived like 30. These characters are meant to be normal human beings, nothing supernatural. Why aren't the fish allowed on Noah's Ark? After saving the world, Noah takes a naked nap. His grandson covers him up, because privacy, and Noah proceeds to curse him, because that's a normal response. Speaking of nudity, in Genesis it's God shit to be naked, but then in Leviticus it's considered ungodly. Really confusing stuff. Abraham visits Egypt for whatever reason, and the Pharaoh will kill him because he has a wife. It's actually kind of a pattern. Another king decided to take Abraham's wife as his wife because she was traveling with her brother, and it claims to be innocent because he was lied to. Apparently not realizing that this is only an issue because he decides to take every woman that walks into his country as wife,
killing the husband if necessary.
God's response to this problem is to make his whole household sterile. Speaking of Abraham, 9 kings go to war just to make him look cool. Lot, Abraham's child, now adult, was willing to let his daughters get gang raped so that 2 strangers wouldn't get hurt, and God doesn't see anything wrong with that. Dina, the child no one wanted because she's a girl, got raped, and the logical way to avenge her is to circumcise all men, of course. Thankfully, Simon and Levi, 2 of her brothers, decide that this is not enough. So while all the men are suffering from circumcision, they go and murder all of them. Their father, Jacob, deems this to be outrageous and against God. Should we have treated our sister as a prostitute? Sounds the reply, and Jacob has nothing to say back. Take that, bitch. Later, Jacob gives all his sons a prophecy about their future, and Judah is told that he will do lots of murdering, and this is good in God's eyes. But Simon and Levi's murder spree was bad in God's eyes. Leviticus details all the religious and social laws. The weird thing about these laws is that they sometimes say that it's for men and women, but most of the time they just say it's for men. So do most rules not apply to women? It is never explicitly said that you need to have children, but God wishes many children on many characters, and most of the female characters are really preoccupied with their ability to procreate. So from that I assume that not having children is considered ungodly. But pregnancy is impure, ejaculation is impure, and so is sex. So God is making people's life hard on purpose. Speaking of sex, as a man, you can't have sex with a man the way you would with a woman. But isn't that like the whole point of gay sex? That it's not straight sex? Also, I'm pretty sure you can't have straight sex as a gay couple. So this verse isn't saying anything. Leviticus 18:16 and 18:20 to 20:21 say that you can't marry or have sex with someone else's wife, but a lot of characters do just that. Insulting your mother and father is under forbidden sexual relations. Just thought I'd share that. During her period, a woman is impure, and it takes 7 days for the impurity to leave, which means that a woman is only pure for 2 weeks every month. Do not respect the laws of other countries, destroy their religious artifacts, and just be a general ass instead. You're not allowed to be mean to your brother, says the text. So you're allowed to be mean to your sister, no problem? If you want to make a wish, you need to pay, and girls are cheaper, anywhere from 2 to 20 shekels. Numbers is the Hebrew state in the desert. So God tells Moses and Aaron, go to this rock, hit it with your stick, and I will make water flow out of it, so the people will know I am real. So they do that, and after this whole event, God is like, now that you did what I said, I will punish you for doing what I said, by not allowing you into the promised land. I personally find that Moses is the only one that actually deserves the promised land. He never defies God and always does what he's told, unlike the Hebrews. God sent snakes to go kill the Hebrews because they sinned and insulted Moses. They asked Moses to make God stop because they understand their mistake, and it would have been so funny if Moses said no. Did they just murder a whole country? Numbers 22 from verse 21 to 35 is the story of a man who goes on a trip with his easel, and God sends angels to make him do unnecessary detours. Why does this story exist? Deuteronomy is the stories of the Hebrews needing to apply God's law. Spoiler alert, they're terrible at it. Moses was supposed to die, but we're a book later and he still hasn't. It's almost like they forgot about it. And his replacement. Actually, it takes him a whole book to die. Joshua talks about conquering the promised land. And it starts with innocents dying because a man hid a jacket and a bunch of coins that he had pillaged. In that new conquered land, they decide to build a bunch of places where you can go worship God, and according to the people, that is bad somehow. Speaking of conquering the promised land, didn't God create all humans? But the Bible says that only the Hebrews are descendants of Adam and Eve, so where did everyone else come from? Judges details all the judges that helped God free his people from oppressors. And there's this great story about this man who lets his wife get gang raped by several different dudes. That's the point of gang raping. I am big dum dum. And there's this great story about a man who lets his wife get raped by several different dudes for one whole night and then expects her to just stand up afterwards like nothing happened. He then cuts her up into 12 people. After that, he cuts her into 12 pieces to teach the Hebrews a lesson, then has the audacity to complain about his situation. Samuel 1 and 2 tells the story of David and his boyfriend Jonathan. The greatest biblical ship changed my mind. I'm not going to give you any details of the greatest stories in this entire third. Trust me. Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing. David gets a wife in exchange for 100 penises. Now if that doesn't make you want to read it, then I don't know what will.
Enough of my stupid voice. Next, some other rule stuff and confusing story parts. Now man has become like one of us through the knowledge of happiness and sadness. So because we know happiness and sadness, we are like gods. There are so many rules on what happens when an animal kills someone, like the animal cares. Moses' face is glowing after talking to God, just like when you have sex. Sounds kinda gay to me. Women need to be purified just because her husband thinks she cheated. Also, she needs to drink sand water to prove her innocence or culpability. That can't be healthy. Not a fan of the whole fearing death thing, because you're a believer. When men make a wish, it's always good. When women make a wish, men can break that wish, and then the wish is bad. If you kill someone with a knife through the act of throwing without any malice, you aren't a murderer. Ladies, if you want marriage freedom, kill your brothers. I don't like this thing called killing people who live somewhere, did nothing to you, just because God says it's the promised land. I also don't like the whole fearing God thing. Don't eat dead animals, that's impure. Give it to your migrant guest instead. Let him be impure. Kindness and respect are overrated anyway. Kill the son that doesn't listen to you. Don't teach him lessons. Don't let him grow and prove himself. Just kill him. If you get raped in the city, it's your fault for not being saved.
Now let's move on to the characters. There are a lot of characters, but only 2 are really worth mentioning. The first one I want to talk about are the Hebrews. They are so annoying. If I was God, I would have killed them in that desert, despite what Moses said. They call themselves the servants of God, but it's really God the one who's serving them. It takes nothing to convince them to go worship someone else. They talk to Joshua like he is God, and at some point one dude makes a religious artifact and the whole of the Hebrews prostitutes themselves in front of it. The story claims they were oppressed in Egypt, but the moment they leave, at every small negative thing that happens, they're like, woe is me, Egypt was better. They also always blame Moses and Aaron for sending them into the desert when it was God who sent them there. I don't know what level of stupid the Hebrews are, but it must be IQ level 0. I don't know who is more dumb in this situation. The Hebrews for forgetting God the moment his disciple dies, or God for forgiving these people over and over again. Whatever the answer is, it takes a special kind of stupid to be either of these people. Speaking of God, he's a massive simp, and also an ass. Like actually.
After creating the earth like an anime protagonist, he gives humans grass to eat. The punishments for the whole Adam and Eve story are very unfair. The snake loses his legs. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not meet a snake with legs in a dark alley. Eve gets torturous pregnancies and Adam needs to work for his own food. Then he gives them tunics of skin, I hope it's animal skin, before sending them on their merry way. He kidnaps a 365-year-old man. Doesn't tell people he doesn't want a big city with a big tower. He divides them with languages instead, because you're not allowed to be too ambitious. He backstabs Abraham, twice. Man he deems righteous, cause he forgot all the kings he murdered. He murders a child, because he doesn't like him, and murders the child's uncle for his strong pull-out game. He allows Joseph to torture. Told Moses to steal. Attempted to kill another child. Bans Hebrews from their own country for eating fermented bread. Says that if you rape a woman she can be your wife. Insinuates killing another child. Says presents are evil. Has zero respect for people with another god. Has really high demands when it comes to his temple. Has anger issues. See Noah's Ark and Exodus 4:14 and 32:10. Killed 3,000 people for worshipping a cow. Is against vampires. Claims to have a lot of patience, but he really doesn't. See Noah's Ark, Exodus 4:14 and 32:10 and all the woe is me Egypt was better stories. Ordered to kill a man for gathering sticks on Sunday. Claims killing is wrong until it benefits his people. See Deuteronomy 7:16. He's also the one who ordered the Hebrews to kill 31 different nations. Joshua 11:20 has God murdering a bunch of people because he feels like it. Didn't he promise Noah he wouldn't exterminate people? Because yeah, that's something he did.
And that's just everything I wrote down. There's a lot more murder. God himself says that he's jealous, and I agree. The text says that he tolerates mistakes, revolution, and sin, but I high-key doubt it. See Noah's Ark, Exodus 4:14 and 32:10, and all the woe is me, Egypt was better stories. He doesn't seem to like the Hebrews, even though he made them his people, and this is especially noticeable with the way he treats Levi's clan, aka the priests.
They're not allowed to be registered until Numbers 3:16, but only men from the age of a month and up instead of every man from age 20 and up plus women. They are only in the 1000. God is in charge of procreating, so he's deliberately giving them less kids. In comparison, all the other clans together are said to be over 10,000 and that is only the men. They can't live in their own little group like everyone else. Once cities are introduced, they need to live in their own separate city with murderers. They have to be servants of another clan. Anyone who interacts with them shall be put to death. They belong to God like slaves or cattle. They are payment for God leading the Hebrews out of Egypt. In Numbers 8:11 they become an offering to God. When they get mad for being treated like slaves by God, Moses tells them they should be happy. Some of them protested, and God ordered them to be killed. They need to repent for other people's sins. Their heritage is God himself. Deuteronomy 12:19 has God telling his people to neglect Levi's clan, unless they need to pay taxes as stated in Deuteronomy 14:22 to 14:27. They always talk about Levi's clan, like they aren't a part of the Hebrews. Do the rules not apply to them? Finally Aaron is made in charge of them. Although it isn't said, it gave me the impression that Levi was stripped of his clan, and it was given to Aaron. Next up, the writing. The pharaoh is simply called Pharaoh. There is no article used. Considering the amount of pharaohs ancient Egypt had, this makes things rather confusing. Which pharaoh are we talking about? Are they insinuating there is only one pharaoh? So speaks God indicates when God starts to speak, but it doesn't do the same for when he stops to speak. Later on they start using oracle of God, and same thing here, they never tell you when this oracle ends. Most of the time when it's used, what's said after doesn't sound like an oracle. In Genesis they mention pure and impure animals, but never explain what that means. Until Leviticus, and the whole system is based on which ones you can and cannot eat. The character of Jacob is sometimes called Israel, but that's also the name of the Hebrews' country, making things confusing while he's alive. I hate when they do a lengthy upsumming, only to sum that up with one word right after. Example: bus, car, train, boat, plane, bike, motorbike, feet, spaceship, in short, all modes of transportation. I don't like that they use the word victim when talking about sacrifices. Makes it sound like they are sacrificing a person when it's an animal. After Samuel it's the same story over and over, just formulated differently. There are a lot of characters, making the stories confusing. I lost track of the timeline by Kings 2. So, God says he won't abandon his people, but so far, it's been the people that abandoned God, not the other way around. Various things require sacrifices and no one is allowed to eat any of it, meaning they're wasting a lot of food. They often call other gods abominations, which is not very nice. Just because you don't believe in them doesn't mean they're an abomination. At the end of each king's life story they ask, if everything is written in some book, why is that a question? Later in Kings 2, 15:31 it's not a question, and that's the only time it's like that. And for King Asa they feel the need to mention that he had some foot disease at the end of his life. Weird flex, but okay. The main character of this story is called Ella. I thought it was a woman, and that I would finally get an interesting story, but no, just another dude with a boring story. God revives a child. Why didn't he do this with anyone else who died and didn't deserve it, like Jonathan? Also, isn't this kinda ropey and broken? LSA killed 42 kids because they said something mean to him. About LSA, a grown adult and a child. Then he lay on the child and put his mouth on his eyes on his hands on his. Sounds like pedophilia, but okay. A female queen. Progressive for the Bible and hopefully an interesting story. Well, never mind. She's a bitch and a tyrant. Didn't expect any less, really. They always talk about the horrible things that are located on the high place. But at this point I've forgotten what's on there. God appoints a 12-year-old to be king, and there seems to be no guide for this child. Then he appoints an 8-year-old, who is better at being king than like literally every adult. He's the only one so far, aside from David, who has followed God's law. The title is Israel Revolts Against God, and that is to no one's surprise. The title mentions a cult, but the whole segment is about people worshipping God, so I'm confused. Seraphs are holy creatures with 6 wings. According to the text it's 2 to fly, 2 for their eyes and 2 for their feet. The feet here are a metaphor for their private parts. That's kinda weird, not gonna lie. A summary of chapter 7 verse 10 to 25. God asks a Jew to ask him something. The Jew never replies, because God just starts to say what he wanted to say. Why did you ask? First God suggests we call a child Emmanuel, and now he suggests this. Fucking this. Somebody please think of the children. It says God will let himself be known by the Egyptians. But getting to know someone is sometimes used as a metaphor for sex. So wait, they mentioned Leviathan. Lucifer, is that you? Or just a 7-headed dragon? The Hebrews have to flee to Egypt, but if everyone wasn't being such a little bitch maybe they wouldn't have to. God compares his own oppression to that of women. Fuck off, dude. No. God says that there was no God before him, and that there will be no God after him, in an attempt to convince the Hebrews. But from their perspective, that doesn't make any sense, because Baal. Oh, don't mind chapter 44 verse 21, it's just God saying humans don't have free will. Dragon. Lucifer. Prostitutes are constantly mentioned. They must have been hella rich, while the Hebrews had kings. Why are there rules about sacrifice, if God never asked for any? Also, didn't God give those rules? So he did ask for sacrifices, but now he claims he didn't. Finally, God recognizes the people of Levi. Hebrews about to destroy Egypt. Aren't they still sheltering the Hebrews? Aren't the Egyptians nice now? As I looked at the living creatures, and I saw on the ground, next to the creatures, a wheel, for each face. When they moved, they went in all 4 directions. The height of their rhymes was scary, and it was a profusion of sparks on the circumference of all four. That whole description sounds like the weirdest, scariest creature that has no right being holy. Your mom looks like a vineyard is a rare insult I encourage everyone to use. Chapter 23 verse 20 says that their member is like that of a horse, and I'm scared of what that means. It's the accuser in court, Satan, but Satan nonetheless. That's it for this first third. To be honest, it's not great. Genesis to Judges is mildly interesting. The 2 Samuel books are great in my opinion, and I highly recommend you read them. After that it's repetitive and boring. I speed read all of it. Every character, except for David and Jonathan, are annoying and badly written. Lots of things don't make sense, and it gets confusing really easily. It took me about 3 months to read this first third, and I'm telling you right now, if the next third is the same story over and over again, I'm not reading it. See you in 3 months for part 2. Thanks for watching this long video. It took me like 3 months to make. If you think this video will convert your kids to atheism, then you should start doing a better job parenting Karen, instead of blaming video games for all your problems. Anyway, don't take this video too seriously. It's a project I undertook for fun. Okay, bye for real.